The Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore coming at you right now. I'm Greg, and he's Jason Pridmore. And we're not going to waste a whole lot of time because Jason is fired up about the World Superbike stuff. But Jason, just give us a quick update on how you're feeling and how your recovery's going.
Good morning, Greg. Yeah, I'm doing good. Just actually, you know what? I slept last night for the first time in a long time, so it was nice that I got some rest, and I had such a good weekend this weekend, just watching all the racing on TV, and the race season's about us now. So, yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be an exciting season. Yeah, it was great to see Chad finish third in Supercross. I know we'll go back to that here in a little while, but that was pretty inspiring. It was neat to see him running so well. So, yeah, overall it was a great weekend, and I'm leaving tomorrow to go get some therapy for 4 or 5 days, and on my leg, and that's it. Things are good. What about you? How was your weekend?
It was good. I spent most of it down in Foley, Alabama, at an archery 3D tournament, commentating that. Not able to shoot, but
Yep.
that was good. We had a good time, and weather held off. A bit of a travel nightmare getting down there. There's so much fog down in Pensacola and Mobile. Flights got canceled and stuff. But I got down there got to do that work, and it's such a departure commentating archery from motorcycle racing, because archery's like, and the arrows in the target, and we know how
it's
I do
a little slower pace,
racing.
isn't it?
Yeah, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and I have a lot of passion for archery, and I've been very fortunate to kind of get involved with the team of people that are producing the video, so it's good. But so that was good, and I have a mix of archery tournaments and racing coming up here, which is going to be very interesting this first couple months of the race season. But you said it, Jay. The first race of 2019 happened for World Superbike at Phillip Island, and dude, look. Some may thought that it was a bit of a surprise result, going 3 for 3 in race wins. Ducati's World Superbike rookie Alvaro Bautista on a brand spanking new Ducati Panigale V4R. He takes triple win, and he becomes only the 6th rider in history to win on his World Superbike debut. Last time that happened was 2007 with the great Max Biaggi. Jason, where do you want to start? You want to start with race results? Do you want to start with, because, I know you want to cover a lot of stuff. Where do you want to start here?
Well, I think that the race results speak for themselves. I think Bautista, tremendous rider. Ducati did an amazing job putting a super great bike together. So, when we start this discussion, I don't want it to be a Ducati versus everybody else battle, and I don't want it to be a Bautista versus Ray battle. That's not what I'm looking at. It's be realistic with what you actually saw, and be realistic with what you actually see at Phillip Island, especially being a bit of a special track that it is. Yeah, Bautista goes good there, all that kind of stuff. I think the thing for me when I watch the races as a competitor, as a person that's been on the track with other bikes and that kind of thing in the past, anybody that doesn't think that Ducati had a clear advantage over the rest of the field are watching it blindfolded, because Bautista's bike was head and shoulders above everybody else's down that big long straightaway. And I've read things where people say, well, if you look at the speeds, Greg, in the Super Pole race, you're going to see that Johnny Ray's speed was the exact same as Bautista. That's because Bautista's following him out of the last corner, drafting past him. And if you watched every opportunity that Johnny got, he drafted back into the back of that Ducati, and he would pass him going into turn 1. The second that Bautista led down the front straightaway, the race was over. So when you look at things, if all of our listeners and fans out there right now are quick to the betting window to go throw a bunch of money on Bautista running the table this year and winning every race and winning all the championship and this and that after 3 out of 39 races, you might be pretty disappointed, because the odds you might get right now might be pretty good after that first race. But you have to look at a couple things. Number one, you got to look at the Rev Limits. Yeah, go on.
All right. I'm going to stop you just there, because let's go ahead and just fill people in on what happened first.
Yeah.
Because not everybody knows what happened in World Superbike. So
we don't want to spoil it, but let's go ahead and do it, Cheeto.
Well, here's the thing. We have 3 race format now. You mentioned it. There's 39 races this year, 2 full races, and a Super Pole race, which is almost a half race, a little bit more. So at the Yamaha Finance Australian round, race number 1, it was a 22 lap affair. Alvaro Bautista won it by 14.9 seconds over Johnny Ray. And then we had Marco Melandri in third, Lowe's in fourth, Vandermark, Raz Gatlioglu. Okay, so Toprak, he was in
Easy
sixth.
for you to say,
Sykes
right?
Sykes in seventh. So Sykes would be the first of our BMW competitors. Then you had Rinaldi, the next Ducati. Reminder, Bautista wins, Rinaldi in ninth, then Chaz Davis in 10th. Then you have Jordi Torres, Laverty also on the Ducati, then Ryder Berger, and so on. So in the race, the second race of the weekend, which is this Tissot Superpole or Tissot Superpole race, that's a 10-lap affair. Bautista wins it by 1.1 seconds over Johnny Ray. Then Haslam in second. Lowe's, Vandermark, Melandri, Cortese, Rinaldi, Laverty, Davis. In our final race, race number 2, 22-lap affair, 12.1 second margin of victory, Bautista over Ray and Haslam. So Ray finishes second all three races. Then you have Vandermark and Lowe's changing positions, Melandri, Davis, Cortese, Laverty, and Camier, our first of our Honda riders. So that happened the first race on Saturday. They get overnight to change some things. Then they have the Super Pole race. And then later on in the day, they have race number 2. So 14 seconds to 12.1 is really I'm looking at, because we know the 10-lap race, no one cares about tires. So it's a flat out all out, who cares? Go as fast as you possibly can. Superbike race. The fastest lap of the race was a 1:30 flat by Johnny Ray, by the way. You know, and the fastest lap of the race in the other race was like a 1:30.5 and a 1:30.8. So you can tell in the Super Pole races that no one cares about tires.
And Johnny lost by 1 point something seconds, where over the course of 20 lap races, he's losing by 15 plus, because Bautista literally probably won the last race by 20 seconds. He let up coming across the line. So again, when you look at it over 10 laps, Ray could stay close. The other thing that you got to look at is Haslam was with Ray basically in the 220 lap races. Haslam could hang with Johnny for most of it. The second race, Haslam fell back a little bit. First race, they pretty much finished nose to tail. But in the Tissot Superpole race, Haslam was quite a ways back when he finished third there. He was a long way back. He did fall in the first race. I thought Haslam was very impressive this weekend. Jumping on, again, he's been on a Cowie for the last 3 years in BSB, comes over to World Superbike, gets on with the factory team, and shows that he can literally run the same kind of pace as Ray. But when you look at it over the course of 10 laps, Johnny lost by 1 point something seconds because tire wear was not an issue. It was basically just go. 22 laps, he's losing by almost 20 seconds. When I read things where people are saying that, well, it just goes to show the level of MotoGP riders compared to World Superbike, Greg, nobody's even talked about Alvaro Bautista in the last 5 years of MotoGP. In fact, most of the stuff that I read was, how does he continue to get a ride? He's, his nickname is Bowling Ball. Alvaro Bautista is a tremendous rider, but when you're not on a factory bike and you're not with a factory team and you don't have the resources, it's very, very difficult. So that's where he has been. His best result ever in MotoGP at the end of the season is 5th, okay? The last 5 years, he's finished 12th at the end of each season. But Jorge Lorenzo gets hurt, and they put him on the factory Ducati. Now, other than that factory Ducati race that he did last year at the end of the year, Greg, nobody would have said that Alvaro Bautista is a Phillip Island specialist, would they? Like, have you ever heard that? But he goes to Phillip Island on a factory Ducati. He's got more resources behind him, and he runs up at the front, finishes 4th, okay? But up until that point, nobody really talked about Alvaro Bautista, but it was such a great story that people got behind it. People loved it. Alvaro Bautista kind of got a reprieve in his career, got put back on the map. He finishes 4th at Phillip Island. Next thing you know, he shows up on a World Superbike, and everybody's Alvaro Bautista is a Phillip Island specialist. Is that right? Really? Like, I don't look at it that way. I look at it like nobody spoke about this poor guy for so long, but he's still a tremendous rider. But when you get the right opportunity, how many times have you heard me say this on our podcast? You get the right opportunity with the right bike and the right team and the right manufacturer. All of these guys are tremendous riders. But when I hear them say that Bautista is so much better, look what his teammate Chaz Davis did. Well, you're not looking at the whole picture. You don't have all the facts. Why would you go out and say something like that Chaz has done half the laps that Batista's done in testing because he's been injured. He hasn't been able to get the quality laps that Batista has had. So you can't even compare those two. Laverty, Eugene has got like no laps compared to Batista because of the restrictions that was put on him. He even said so in our podcast, Greg. The restrictions that were put on him about how many miles he could do, how many kilometers he could do at each test. And then you got Rinaldi. Rinaldi's never been to Phillip Island, and it's the same thing. He hasn't had as many laps as Batista has had on that bike. Taking 0 away from Batista, like I said, I love the guy. I think he did a tremendous job. But the disparity between what he is on and where he finished compared to the rest of the field, it is not fair to sit there and say that MotoGP riders are at a whole nother level than World Superbike guys.
No, there's no way. Absolutely not. I mean, we've seen Johnny Ray when he was on a Honda in World Superbike and he won a couple a year and he went in and rode GP. He was competitive. I mean, I thought that Johnny Ray on that Honda, and I thought Johnny Ray outperformed in GP what he was expected to do.
You know, and I meant to check on this before, but when he did go to MotoGP in 2012 or 13, I can't remember what year it was, but I don't even think he tested. I think he showed up and raced initially, or he may have got like a day on the bike prior. What people have to remember is that when you're racing the elite, when you are racing the elite people, you have to have everything line up in your corner. You can't literally just show up, jump on a MotoGP bike and get on a superbike and just go and smoke everybody. Batista didn't just show up at Australia having never ridden that bike and just go out and smoke people. Then the argument would be quite a bit different, I think, that we would have here. But the fact is that he had a full season of preseason testing. They found a lot of things. When they went to Australia, they'd already got 6 days under their belt on that bike for him that were all quality. Guy's been fully fit and ready to go. He's been riding a V4 in MotoGP. So the difference of the Ducati compared to maybe last year's bike might be a lot different. And Ducati's come out and basically said that a lot of the things that they've done with this motorbike have come from their MotoGP bike, Greg.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Well, Jason, let's talk about the great equalizer. If you had one great equalizer, it would probably be the Suzuka 8-hour, right?
Suzuka 8-hour, you know, and it's in my notes. It's that you get these guys that will intermix between MotoGP and World Superbike guys. And if you go and you look at the lap times, even from last year and the years prior when Paul Espargaro was there, Bradley Smith was there, this and that, you go and look at that stuff, the lap times are the exact same. They're on the same bike. It's the exact same. And if you take Johnny Ray and you give him, you could take Johnny Ray, you could take anybody, okay? I'm saying you take them and you put them on a MotoGP bike and you get them 8 days of testing with the team and all that good stuff. He's going to be at the front. It cracks me up because it's like, there's no way that people could think that there's that big of a disparity. I asked you earlier, Greg, who won the MotoGP championship in 2006?
Troy Bayliss.
And what else did he do that year?
He won a race, last MotoGP race of the year and a guest ride, right?
He went to the final race of the year at Valencia on a factory Ducati. And schooled him. I was actually there. And people are going to go, oh, it's a different time. It's a different era. It's a different thing. There was a lot of people back in the day that thought that Troy had the best Ducati out there and he was winning World Superbike and this and that. Doesn't matter. Troy Bayliss is one of the greatest riders I've ever seen, ever. And then he went to MotoGP after being in MotoGP previously. Then he goes to MotoGP, jumps on the bike that weekend, and goes out and smokes everybody at the final race of the season at Valencia. World Superbike guy goes to MotoGP and wins. When you look at MotoGP guys right now in the paddock, Marco Melandri has accomplished 10 times more than Alvaro Bautista ever did. I'm talking way more. 20 podiums and 5 wins for Marco Melandri in MotoGP. Okay. From 2003 to 2010, he had 20 podiums, 5 wins, and finished second in the championship. Bautista has had 3 podiums in MotoGP over the course from 2010 to 2018. He had 3 podiums, no wins, no fastest laps. Best he ever finished was 5th. That was his second year or third year. That was on the Gresini Honda, which is basically the equivalent of what Cal's on now, Crutchlow, okay? So he was on kind of a semi-factory, bike with Gresini. He finished 5th in the championship that year. The last 5 years, he's finished 12th in the championship. Alvaro Bautista hasn't even been talked about. So I think the thing is that people feel like this is a great feel-good story, and it is. And you know what? It is great to see somebody else win. That's what the series needs. That's what World Superbike needs. People have to be happy about that. I'm happy about it. I'm glad to see that there's going to be somebody right now that's not afraid to win and going to take it to Johnny Ray. But to say that he's 15 or 18 seconds lap faster and that much better of a rider than Johnny Ray is absurd to me. And I think that that will play out as the year goes on, Greg. I think that that's one of the things you're going to see. Quickest lap that he did last year on the factory Ducati MotoGP bike. Over the course of the MotoGP race, he did a 29.7 and he went 30.5.
You're talking about at Phillip Island.
At Phillip Island. At Phillip Island, Bautista last year went 29.7 on the factory Ducati MotoGP bike, and he went 30.5. 0.8 of a second between those two bikes, best lap to best lap. And like you said, in the Superpole race,
that's not entirely accurate, Jason, because Bautista did a 130.1 in the Superpole race.
I was just going to say it. That was over 10 laps. And you also, when you look at that,
you're talking about 22. Okay,
I'm talking about the full race distance. Okay, so and I was just getting to the fact that you said over the 10 lap sprint, you went 30.1 because it was more of a kind of a what they call a Superpole kind of fast race.
Yeah, just flat out club race. Flat out club race.
And let me throw one more little thing at you there. When you look at those two lap times, 29.7 in MotoGP on the factory Ducati. Okay. To a 30.5 over about the same race distance. I think MotoGP goes 28 laps or 29 laps, or maybe it might even be a couple more. But regardless of all that, how much better do you think the Michelins are than the Pirellis?
Well, for sure the rear.
Well, so when you look at that and you sit there and you think, well, he was only 0.8 off of what he did on a factory Ducati MotoGP bike on his Superbike. Mm-hmm. This is not a bash on Pirelli, but you got to think that the Michelin tires that are running on those MotoGP bikes are a better tire than what the Pirellis have right now on the World Superbike. I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that. So when you look at that, if you put something else underneath him that maybe either has more grip, more longevity, whatever, the thing you got to think about there is tire to tire, the Michelin's probably a better tire, and he was still only 0.8 off on Pirellis.
Yeah.
Right. And when you have, let me ask you another question, Greg. This is just a circular question. When you have a bike that's fast, are you harder on tires or easier on tires?
Easier.
100% easier.
100% easier because you can just get it on the meat of the tire, pull the trigger, and then let it do more work for you than have to rip it around corner. That's a conversation we're going to have when we get to the MotoGP test too, by the way. Corner speed, entering corner, mid-corner speed, and exit speed versus just pulling the trigger and using the motor. Of course, it's going to be easier on the tire.
Yep. And if you've been to Phillip Island, anybody that's been to Phillip Island, as they come out of turn 2 and they head towards Stoner, Bautista was almost passing those guys between turn 2 and Stoner corner. I couldn't believe how fast it was out of there. Now, I want to go back again. This is not knocking. Ducati, that bike is insanely good. Ducati did their homework. That Panigale V4 is an amazing motorcycle. Truly, they did everything they had to do.
And it's new.
And it's new, and it's going to get better, and that kind of thing. But what I'm saying is, you got to be able to compare apples to apples here. And if you really watch those races, anybody that doesn't think that there was a slight advantage are not really being honest with themselves. And I get frustrated when I hear people basically saying that World Superbike guys are not at the same level as MotoGP guys, because I'm telling you right now, you could take a handful of World Superbike guys right now, and if you give them the same testing, the same everything, they're going to be right up. They're going to be up in the front. They are absolutely going to be up in the front.
Mm-hmm.
And just when I was reading some of the stuff that I was reading this week, I'm like, what am I missing? I don't understand it. But Greg, this is where. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when asked for some perspective, or everybody after the race is saying to all the other competitors like, "Ooh, Bautista." Johnny Ray on WorldSBK.com, he said this, okay, and I wrote this quote down as best as I could, right? So he said, quote, "Last year's double race winner, I don't think won another race and wasn't in the top 3 in the championship. So it's certainly a very unique circuit. The way that you use the tire. for sure I can't ride around this for 22 laps because I wouldn't arrive at the end or race around it. I'm sorry. So I
Yep.
think what Johnny's saying in that is that with the amount of tire he had to use in order to stay with Bautista, which was proven to us in the Super Pole race that he can ride with them, he went faster, actually, a 130 point flat. So if you're saying in a 10 lap race, Johnny Ray on a Kawasaki only went 0.3 of a second slower than Bautista did last year on a factory Ducati MotoGP bike.
Yep.
Like these times are the closest I think I've ever seen GP bikes to World Superbikes, you know? But that's
Yep.
totally unresearched. But anyway, the point
But
is
when they go
that
to Jerez and they test, remember a couple years ago, Ray was actually quicker than a bunch
quicker,
of the
yeah, no,
satellite guys on MotoGP bikes. So
yeah,
but you're 100% right.
race,
You're 100% right,
race
Greg.
distance is different, and
Yep.
the quality of
100%.
tires is different, and you know the Michelins are designed to do slightly different things than the Pirelli's designed to do as well. You know, so it's one of those things though where you're saying Johnny Ray is basically telling us in this quote, everybody calm down.
Yep.
Okay. Number one, it's one racetrack. Number two, you and I talked about it last week. Phillip Island is very unique in how it flows. What's going to test the balance of the Panigale V4R is going to be tracks that we go to that are going to have different elements thrown at it that Phillip Island doesn't have. And number one is going to be stop and go. Now, right now, the thing looks like it comes off the bottom really well and it accelerates really well and all that stuff, right? But
Yep.
how's the chassis going to handle having a hard load under braking with the Pirelli on it? You know, those types of things. Like there's so much left to be decided. You said it earlier, 3 races of 39 races. There's 36 to go and 12 more racetracks. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Ducati handles all that stuff. Not to mention the fact that you got to have a healthy Chaz. You can't really take data off the bikes that aren't set up exactly suspension wise or whatever, just like the factory bikes.
Yep.
You now have a Kawasaki team loaded with Leon Haslam, who's shown that he's got pace,
Yep.
and he rides very similar in terms of setup to Johnny Ray. Johnny Ray said in that interview post race how happy or how good the garage is, you know, and the fact that it's an harmonious garage. They're all, you know, happy. And he commented on how well he gets on with Haslam away from the racetrack. All those things are going to help Kawasaki's cause in terms of how the bike works at different racetracks. So I just think it's way too early for people to start deciding this championship or saying, oh, yeah, I see MotoGP riders are better than World Superbike riders. It's complete and utter garbage. It is.
And if you go deeper into it and you look at, let's talk about some other guys. Tom Sykes is a great example. For the first leg, Tom Sykes qualified 4th. Super pole guy. He's you know, obviously he's got tons of pole positions over his career. I think he's right up there with Corser, I believe. Didn't he break Corser's like super pole record last year?
Yeah,
So one lap guy.
Yeah, he's right in the mix.
That BMW looked incredible for first time out. It was so slow down a straightaway. It was embarrassing. Like it was embarrassing on the first race when Bautista got out front. The couple Cowies were there and Alex was there. Lowe's. Sykes would come out of the last corner right up the back of the 2 Cowies and the Yamaha. And by the time they got to the end of the front straightaway, he was 15 bike lengths behind. Couldn't draft, couldn't do anything. In the Super Pole race, which determines your grid spot for the third race, that was something I didn't know going into the weekend. In the Super Pole race, he ended up getting hung out in turn 1 on like the second lap. I think he may have got in there a little deep, got passed by a bunch of guys. That gridded him further back for the final race of the weekend. So he got stuck in traffic in the second race. But the BMW, I feel, restriction-wise, needs to be opened up because it was so slow, and that BMW motor isn't slow. If you watch the 4 Yamahas, Greg, for the majority of the weekend, they're all riding with each other. The Yamaha package is what it is. And if you look at the 4 riders, they got Cortese, Lowe's, Vandermark, and Melandri. They basically all rode together. And the thing that hurt both Melandri in the second 22-lap race and it hurt Alex in the first 22-lap race, tires went off with about 4.5 to go. And you saw Melandri finish 4th in race 1. You saw Vandermark finish 4th in race 2. And in the Super Pole race, you saw Lowe's finish 4th. Yamahas are all pretty much comparable. But I think this is where you run into the issue of, do you let manufacturers just open up and build their superbikes the way they want to build them? Because now there's a precedent that has been set that Ducati has come in. They're letting their bike rev to 16 grand. Now, for the first, isn't it like after 3 races they reevaluate, Greg? Don't they reevaluate the rules? And
there's no set time. I mean,
okay,
theoretically, I think if
they
they
could do
wanted
something before the
to,
next round if they wanted
they
to.
could. They
Okay,
could. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Thailand is going to be the same thing that you saw. I don't know if it's going to be the same thing, but it's going to be relatively the same thing that you saw here at Phillip Island. Thailand's
But
got
Jason, hold
2.
on. Let me ask you this question,
Yeah.
okay? So let's switch gears out of racer mode to promoter mode.
Yep.
If you're World SBK right now, are you really wanting to change the rules, or are you enjoying the conversation that this has created, good or bad? The fact that the series is now getting some much needed recognition.
Well, I think that there's no question that they're happy about that, but there comes a line where you have to draw a fairness line down the stand to your competitors, I feel. And it was no different than what MotoAmerica did last year with their 300 Cup. The KTM and Cowie clearly had a huge advantage over the Yamaha at the beginning of the year, and something needed to be done, especially when you have a class that was new and fresh like it was. Something had to be done. They did it, and by the end of the year, we saw the Yamahas way more competitive, and we had really tight racing at the front. Again, there was nobody running away, and that kind of thing. I think that you do damage to the integrity of the series if you're not being fair to the competitors and to the other manufacturers that are riding. When you see on paper that the Ducati can rev to 16.3 and your next nearest rival is at 14,950, and that's the MV Agusta, there's got to be something that everybody sits there and looks back and goes, okay, hold on a second. This doesn't really seem fair in the rules of racing or in the rules of sport. Like you want there to be competition. You want that. In the last couple of years, Greg, they penalized the Kawasaki. The Kawasaki has not been the fastest bike on track the last couple of years, but they managed to put a good package together, and you got a great rider on a great team with great crew and all that stuff that we talk about. Um, the Yamaha this year hasn't really had a big step in performance as far as the things that they've done. They've worked on some electronics. They got a new swing arm. But basically that's it. And that bike now is what, 4 years old, Greg, that R1? Is it 3 or 4? It's got to be 4
Three,
years
yeah,
old.
for the
Yeah,
new
3 or 4
4
years
years
old.
old for the
So,
new one, yeah, the
yep.
newest iteration,
The,
which wasn't a huge departure from the one before.
correct. So they're in the pipeline right now. You got to think that there's, maybe Yamaha's behind the curtain right now thinking, okay, well, we just saw what Ducati did. So we're going to build a bike that revs to 16.5.
Well, what
And
you're talking about there is homologation specials. Those
correct.
bikes that are,
I'm,
yeah. So you have the
yep.
Panigale V4, you have the R is a special one, you have the Kawasaki ZX10RR, which is
Yep.
the homologation special, and Yamaha has had some homologation specials before, but now they've got to be looking. Okay, now what do we do? You know what I mean?
Correct.
Because the ZX10RR has got some special bits and pieces in the engine to create 600 more RPM because of the rules specifically in World Superbike. So the question for Yamaha is, can they react or will they react? Is there even budget left for them to do that in World Superbike?
Yeah. You look at the Hondas and and that kind of thing too. And you go, what's the motivation there? They're going to have to build new bikes. Ultimately, they're going to have to build new bikes to get more competitive, to run up to where this new precedent has been set. And I think this is where you run a very slippery slope of penalizing teams for or manufacturers for building excellent motorcycles. Do I feel that Ducati should be punished because they built such an incredible bike? Not even in the slightest. I want to see the biggest, baddest, most awesome bikes out there. I don't want to see Bautista get penalized because Ducati's done their homework and they have built an outright ripping of a motorcycle. That's what pushes technology. That's what keeps fans interested. That's what keeps us all on the edges of our seats to see these new bikes that get to come out and how good they really are. Would you agree on that? And
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I don't want to see them detuned or something taken away from them or weight added because a manufacturer's come out and built something special. And I think as a Ducati fan, if I'm gone out and I've bought this new Ducati and I'm super pumped to watch the races now and excited to see somebody taking it to the Kawasaki's and taking it to Johnny Ray, I don't want to see my brand get detuned and brought back to the competition. And that's why I
It's a
think that
toughie.
It's a very tough situation. I feel like Dorna had to do something because one guy was winning so much, and he continued to win even after they were doing things. It's going to be a very interesting year. Thailand's going to be, I think, March third weekend of March. Second weekend of March is Thailand. I think that track is going to, if all things stay the exact same, I think that you're probably going to see what you saw at this last round. It doesn't look like a very easy track to pass on. And it'll be another one of those things where I feel that if they get there and Batista, I think he tested there last year with MotoGP, I believe. So he's seen the track. But it's going to be a little bit of what you saw at Phillip Island, where I think that there's a chance he could go there and dominate. And then we'll see. And that just depends if they do anything with the rules. But either way, it was great to see bikes back on track. It was great to see bikes ripping. And I love the conversation. I love the fact that so many people are passionate about what they saw and what they see. And I think that let's just not, as Paul Carruthers said, I love that Paul, did you see his tweet that he put out to us? Like, let's just go ahead and do the World Superbike banquet now. I did a tweet that basically said, I can't believe how many. So Paul's already like, let's just go ahead and do the banquet now and just call the rest of the season off. Right. I don't think that's necessary. Paul was being obviously sarcastic. I don't think that that's going to be necessarily the case. There was also another race on the weekend, Greg, the World Supersport race. And that was an interesting in and of itself because it was a 16-lap race with a pit stop because Pirelli found it that prior to the race weekend, they obviously had a test, and there were some signs that they saw that the tires were not going to last over the 16-lap race distance. It definitely broke up a good race. The pit stop did. You had two teammates being Kara Casulo and why am I just
Krummenacher.
Just Krummenacher, Randy Krummenacher. How much different does he look without his beard, by the way?
Yeah, seriously, right? Yeah.
Those two guys were going at it pretty hard. You had Jules Cluzel on the GMT 94, new team for him. I'm familiar with that team from World Endurance. He was running third, ultimately would finish second after Kara Casulo had some problems in the pits where he tried to take off with the rear stand still attached to his bike rolling down pit lane. So there really wasn't too much drama in that race to think of. It was a pretty boring race, actually. But I think World Supersport, I want to say it's in a little bit better place. I think there's more guys that contend for the championship this year. I think you got 3 or 4 guys. I was kind of hoping that Maes would be good on the Cowie, but he was miles back. But again, Phillip Island does have a tendency to generate really good racing, which is a concern because in World Supersport, it wasn't so much. Did you get a chance to watch it?
Yeah, I did. And I don't know. It was kind of hard to follow with the pit stops, and you had penalties that riders had gotten infractions from different. I don't know. I can't remember. One of them came in too early, or so. It was just a mess. It was a mess of a race, and for me, I was like, I know this is not World Supersport. I know these races are going to be closer. That the lap times usually aren't as spread apart as they've been. For Krummenacher, he did a 133.2. First of all, he won it by 6.1 seconds. So it was Krummenacher, Cluzel, Caricasulo, Barbara, and Gradinger, or is it Gradinger?
Gradinger, yeah, Thomas Gradinger.
On the Callio racing machine. So, it's what I love to see about the series. You had a Swiss rider win, a Frenchman in second, Italian in third, Spanish in fourth, an Austrian in fifth, Japanese rider in sixth. There's a Hungarian rider. Like there's such a, there's Belgium in the mix. There's Netherlands in the mix. So it's a good mix of people that you get from Europe and all over the world to race up. And they usually race a little bit closer. The fastest lap that I saw was a 133.2 from Krummenacher, who his speed was only 268.7 kilometers was his top speed. And that was just a little higher than his qualifying speed, where you had like Cluzel and Caricasulo in the low to mid 270s, along with a lot of the other riders in the field. So I don't know. It got clunky for me. Let's put it that way. The race got clunky with the pit stop, and I understand they had to do it for safety, so no big deal. So in a way, I'm going to say, great. Krummenacher won it. Congratulations. You have the points lead, but the real racing is going to come when Pirelli brings a tire that can go race distance.
Agreed. And I think that it's too bad that we had to see a race kind of get stopped because some of the riders, they had imposed Greg, they imposed a from the time you enter pit lane to the time you exit pit lane, there was a time that you had to stay within those two like barriers, basically. So as soon as you come in pit lane, you put your pit lane speed limiter on. To the time you leave pit lane, there was a certain amount of time that each team had to stay. That way, it wasn't giving an advantage. And I'm sure that's the MV Augusta effects. I believe the MV is single-sided swing arm, so their pit stops might have been quite a bit quicker than the others. So they were probably trying to make it. And I think Clazel and a couple of them kind of got out of pit lane a little bit quick. So they, for every second that they got out of there quicker, there was like a 5-second penalty imposed. So I think Clazel got out there a second earlier than he was supposed to. So they penalized him 5 seconds. And at the end, it didn't matter because he had a big enough lead over Caricasulo at the end to where it didn't really upset the results.
I think it was 1-1 or something. But
was it 1-1? Might have been.
He got a 1.3 second penalty.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. Yeah. So that might have been what it was.
Van Stralen got like a 9.2, but
Mahias?
Yeah, Mahias, 19.5 second penalty for him.
He did. Wow.
Yeah, for infringement, pit stop intervention time. So
got
it. That's why I'm saying it got a little clunky for me. There were some penalties that were there. Cluzel still 6.1 seconds behind. So if you back out that penalty time, that's 4.8 basically. So it made no difference in terms of the actual finishing order. It only made a difference in terms of the gap in the final results. But I think time will tell. More good racing for World Supersport, which is always some of our best racing, heading down the pipe. Anything else you want to say about World Supersport?
No, I think that I was pretty much done with that one, and hopefully I think that you're going to see Clazel. There's that kid Perilari, who's young kid as well. He'll be up there. I think you're going to see some good racing, especially once those guys start headed back towards Europe to some different types of tracks. I think that series is going to be okay.
All right. Well, MotoGP had their last test of the preseason at the LaSalle circuit in Qatar. And with the MotoGP season opener less than 2 weeks away at the same track, it was an important one. So let's go over the combined results for the couple days of testing. Jason, let's see. Maverick Vinales leads the way at a 154.2, and then Fabio Quartararo, also on a Yamaha, 154.4. Rins on the Suzuki, a 54.5. Marquez on the Honda, that's your world champ, at a 54.613. Valentino just a couple ticks behind him at a 54.651. Lorenzo, 54.6 as well. Morbidelli at a 54.6. And then you have Pol Espargaro on the Red Bull KTM 8th place at a 154.7. Then Nakagami, Petrucci, your first of your Ducatis at a 154.8, followed by Jack Miller. Then you had Joan Mir, Bagnaia in the mix, and so on and so forth, all the way down. Crutchlow, 17th. So what are you taking away, Jason, from this 3 days, not 2 days, 3 days of combined testing, of which the top 13 all did their fastest times? Well, that's not true. Sorry. Rins did his fastest time on day 2, but the rest of them in the top 13 all did it on day 3. So what are you taking away from this? Is this it? Is this the race? You think Ducati's going to finish in 10th place?
Greg, honestly, I am so pumped up for MotoGP this year. I think it's going to be great to watch. I think it's going to be great to see. And I think that when you really look at the first 7 guys, I mean, it just tells a pretty crazy story. You got 4 Yamahas in the top 7 right off the bat. You got 2 Hondas in that top 7 and a lone Suzuki. Now, the thing I'm really interested in is you've got Marquez and Lorenzo, both who are not healthy all the way. Neither one of them are healthy, and they're 4th and 6th. I think the Honda has been way more adaptable for Lorenzo than it was when he jumped on the Ducati. I don't know how much those guys are talking to each other, but I don't want to blow my own horn, but toot, because I've been saying Alex Rins is the real deal now for a year. I love the kid and how he rides. I think he led day 2 there, didn't he? Yep. And obviously Yamaha has found something. I'd love to know how many people thought that Fabio Quartararo would have ended up 2nd after 3 days of testing. So I find it ironic that we got top 7 bikes that are all, Hondas and basically and Yamahas, But then you got Paul Espargaro. The thing that's really interesting to me about that is he's 8th on the KTM, and you think he's motivated a little bit because the new signing that he had, Johan Zarco, the guy that was going to come in that everybody believed in, all of us know how good he is, he's 19th. So again, it goes back to right bike, right team, right crew, right everything. Espargaro has been on that bike for a couple years, done a great job, and he's a full second quicker than Zarco right now. That's best lap to best lap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really interesting.
Well, here's something that's very interesting though. We know that Qatar is got some long straightaways. So if you look at it and you say the Ducati is in 10th place, there is no chance that this is the way the race is going to be. When you're out there on your own doing laps, Jason, it's that whole thing that I've talked to you about before. You know, way back in the day when they used to have the Formula USA series, and I got to watch Fritz Kling, who's now passed away, but part of my inspiration for racing, because Fritz was a much taller rider, a bigger rider, and he was on the Yama Monster, which back then was a 1,000 or plus 1,000 cc, superbike kind of bike when they were racing 750s, and he raced at Road Atlanta against Rich Oliver on a 250. And you think to yourself, no chance. But man, a chance. Rich would pass him. Now, I'm just on the fence watching on the fence as a fan. And I watch Rich Oliver turn it in on Fritz in turn 1. And he would check out through turn 7 at Road Atlanta. And then the Yama Monster would reel him in, and he would pass him. This is during Gravity Cavity days. Would pass him and lead
on the
him.
Dutchman bike,
on the Dutchman racing Yama Monster. So Fritz ended up winning that, right? Because what Rich Oliver knew was that once Fritz got by him from out of the, down at the bottom of the Gravity Cavity, up the top of the hill, this right-hand turn under the bridge, down to the final corner, he controlled the speed that Rich Oliver had, and so he won those races. Now, what Maverick Vinales told Peter McLaren at Crash.net is that Maverick, he credited Yama. I'm reading this little article, part of the article that Peter McLaren posted. Maverick Vinales credited Yamaha's corner speed and mid-turn gains for helping him finish preseason testing on the top of the timesheets, he said Monday night. The improvements have allowed him to overcome a 10-kilometer-an-hour straight-line deficit, but the Spaniard heads into the season opening race weekend, which, of course, is March 8th and 10th, concerned by the M1's continued lack of rear edge grip under acceleration. Now, here's the quote, 2 quotes from Vinales. 1, I feel good on the bike, but still, if we want to battle for victory, we need a little bit more grip, unquote. The second quote is, the bike is great. The Yamaha chassis, as you know, has always been good, but now it's time to work on electronics a little bit and the power delivery. It's a shame that we don't have more tests. So, Jay, what that's telling me is that obviously we know what these results are in this test. But I think that you're talking about a 10-kilometer-an-hour difference. People are still turning their heads going, when's Ducati going to the front? And we haven't even gotten there yet, for race day. But I just think that in the test that Vinales led the timesheets because he got clear laps. But when things are racing, it's going to be a lot different. Not only for the top speed, but for some other things that I'll mention after you comment.
Well, I think the thing that really sets true for Yamaha is it's not just Vinales. Vinales has proven to be like the champion of testing over the last 2 or 3 years. He's led how many tests, Greg? I mean, we can't even count how many tests the guy leaves at the end of a 2-day test or a 3-day test on top, but it hasn't really translated into victory, has it? Because he has so much trouble at the beginning of the races with fuel loads and that kind of thing. So you can't really read too much into the fact that, he's fastest testing and this and that. And he did whatever he did on whatever tire he did that obviously had a lot of grip on that lap because he went so fast. I think the thing that really proves to Yamaha that their bike has improved is the fact that you do have 4 of the 6 guys, 4 out of the first 7 all on Yamaha. So Yamaha's made a universal improvement there. There's no question. I think where the Ducati will run into issues with this is just the fact that you've got more guys up front. Dovi, Petrucci, when it comes to outright lap time, we don't really know what tire they did it on. We don't know if they just did race distances. Doha 2 grade can be a little bit finicky as far as weather goes. Yeah, it's in the desert. It's always hot, but there's a moisture level that comes up there in the evenings. And depending on when you did your lap time or when these guys were actually testing, that could have played true as well. And some of these teams, especially with it being on day 3, they might have been doing more race runs as opposed to trying to get that outright lap time. I agree with you. The Ducatis are going to be incredibly hard to beat there. The track had, I know I've asked you this before, but have you ridden Doha? Did you go there or you haven't gone there?
No,
No.
I've never been there.
It's really only got one big straightaway. Just the front straightaway, Greg, is long. It's really long front straightaway. Everything else is very flowing. Everything else is just kind of it flows very nice. It's got some really fast turns towards the end of the lap. These 3 fast rights that are great, but there's not a ton of straightaway. There is a lot of time where you're on the edge of the tire. So for Vinales to say that, that's something that he probably started to feel over race distance. So maybe the Yamahas will have a drop in performance sort of 10, 12 laps into that race. And maybe the Ducatis, you look at the times that Petrucci ran there at a 54.8, as well as Miller with a 54.8. I believe Dovey was a click off of that, 55.2 for Dovey. So there's no way Dovey is 0.8 of a second or a full second off. No chance come race time. So the Ducatis will be tough. But I think, too, looking at the Suzuki, Joan Mir ran 54.9. His teammate is at 54.4. So Joan Mir was only half a second off of Rins. 0.4 actually. So the Suzuki, I think, is going to be very good as well. I think that the Suzuki has probably improved its package more over the last 4 months than any of the bikes. If I had to look at it, because Rins has been at the top of a lot of the timesheets, always in the top 2, top 3. So I'm looking at this first race. I believe is it the second week of March, or I know it's coming up.
8th and 10th, 8th through the 10th. Yeah.
8th through the 10th. So, man, I can hardly wait. I think that first race is going to be, I think you're going to have 6 or 7, 8 guys in that lead group for a long time at the beginning of that race.
Well, Quartararo finished second overall, and MotoGP posted up a little quick soundbite with him on Twitter that I wanted to play with you for you, because it sounds like he's already a seasoned racer.
I'm really happy about today. The work we do with the used tire, we make 14 laps with a really good pace. Still need to improve some things to change the electronic, but anyway, I'm quite happy because also the lap time, the time attack was really fast, and that was our weak point in the past. So I'm really happy. The race is in less than 10 days, I think. So yes, I'm really looking forward. But first of all, for my first race, I want to be calm, don't thinking about the position, just about the work we do these 3 days of test. And for sure, if we enjoy, the result will come.
So I think, listen to that, here's the thing that I'm taking away from all this, and just keeps bouncing through my mind. What motorcycle out there is going to be raceable? Is the Yamaha a raceable bike if it gets around a Honda or a Ducati, or a Suzuki? Is the Suzuki a raceable motorcycle? We know the Ducati is. And from raceable, I mean, can you get the stability you need under hard braking to make a pass? And then can you control the pace after that and not leave yourself vulnerable for more passes after that? And that's where I have concerns over the Yamaha at the moment, is that it's a bike that can go fast on the edge of the tire, but is it raceable? Does that make sense to you?
In other words, Greg, if you've got a guy that's a little bit faster than you, or somebody that you have to get past, you can't really take advantage of the advantage that you have, which is rolling through the mid-corner section of the turn, being able to roll through there fast. And that's what Vinales is basically stating, that he has a great feel for that, the controllability of the motorbike going into the corners and through the middle of it. But if you have somebody there in front of you, I agree, it can make things a little bit more difficult for you to actually run the way you want to ride, right? So I agree with you on that. And I think that the Ducati has gotten so much better over the last few years. I find it really interesting that so far this year, Petrucci has really done better than Dovey in a lot of the tests. I think that Dovey, I think that Dovey will, obviously he'll be there come race time, but he might be studying a lot more into the Ducati right now, other than just outright laps. When you listen to Quartararo talk, it goes right back to the feel that he has under the electronics. So there's probably things there on the entrance to corners that he wants to see better, or maybe on the exit. He didn't really get into specifics of the things that they want to work on with the electronics. But you got to think that that's got to be I have to think that that's got to be the exit of corners, because Vinales is obviously complaining about not having the grip that he'd like to have on the exits, edge grip. That might be something that can control a little bit through the electronics. So, but, you kind of go back, how good's the KTM? I mean, let's talk about them real quick. You've got the KTM you got one guy in 8th, and you got the rest of them in 20th. 19th, 20th, and 23rd. I mean, Cyrene is lost on this bike. He's not even been close in any of his tests. He's jumped off that Yamaha, and he's just not even been close. And I would have thought that, especially it being the last test, that Zarco would have made a big jump. I think that there's some definite reasons for panic there already to start the season. For him to be 19th, and his teammate Miguel Oliveira essentially ran the exact same time as him. Both ran 55.7. So, when you look at what Paul is doing, he's a full second ahead of them. There's something that he's maybe found that's not been too bad. And another guy that we've seen in the top 10 this offseason a lot, Greg, is Takaki Nakagami. I mean, he's been pretty routinely up in that top 10 since he's got on this new Honda as well. So, he was only half a second off of Vinales himself. I just think that there's so many great storylines for MotoGP this year. So it really is, throw the cards up in the air come the first race and see which color it lands on, because I think it could be a number of. I really believe that you could have 3 or 4 or 5 different winners at that first race.
I agree, but I also think that if you look at Repsol Honda and you look at Marc Marquez, you couldn't bet against him. But I think the storyline for me, the biggest storyline going into the year, is Repsol Honda's hiring of Jorge Lorenzo. Because if you look at Marc Marquez's career, when's the last time that he's ever been challenged to be the A rider? I mean, going back to when he was teammates with Cameron Beaubier on a 125 KTM, when has he ever been challenged? And I think
Rossi,
that if you
when he
look
was
at
with
the dynamics,
Rossi, I think when he was with Rossi, when he came on, obviously when he came up from the then 250 championship and he jumped up onto the factory team with Rossi, right? That would probably be the only time he was really considered the second rider.
Right. And you can't have Rossi or anyone on the team and go, okay, welcome to MotoGP class. You're going to develop this bike. I mean, that's kind of what happened to Nicky when Pedrosa got on that bike,
Yep.
but other than that, really, you're looking at it and go, okay. So the thing is I think the really interesting thing is going to be not only watching the entire race this year and how the whole season plays out, but I'm going to keep a close eye on the Repsol Honda team itself, because Lorenzo could start challenging Marquez for that top spot and really give him some fits. And it'll be interesting to see how Marquez's psyche can handle that if that situation works. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it's really an interesting dynamic that you have a 4-time MotoGP champion coming in and is considered the B rider, right? I think that Honda's doing everything they can to deflect that. I agree with you 100%. I think it's going to be really fun to see how much different they ride that bike, how much different they ride the motorcycle. It's going to be interesting to see when they're actually locked in to each other on the racetrack. It'll be fun to see the dynamics of what each rider does differently on that bike. Lorenzo, the first 2 days of this test, wasn't really close. And just reading his Instagrams and some of the things he was saying, he was just trying to get comfortable and he was working on things. He missed the test at Sepang. So a lot of these guys have a lot more time on the bikes than Lorenzo has on his new bike. So the fact that he's able to throw down a lap time that was quicker than even he'd ever gone before on the Yamaha, I think that bodes well for him. And for sure, Marquez is going to have one eye on him. I mean, they both did the exact same time. They both did 54.6. Rossi did 54.6. Morbidelli did 54.6. I mean, you got 4 guys there that all went 54.6 from 4th to 7th. So, but I agree with you, Greg. It's got to be a weird feeling in that garage when you look across. They've won the last 6 world championships, those 2 guys. So,
I don't know. Do you want to hear what Jorge had to say on MotoGP?
I do. Yep, let's hear it.
All right, hold on. Check this out.
It's just my third day as official rider. In Valencia and Jerez, I wasn't fit, so it was also very long time ago. So we didn't have enough time to to be very, very ready for the first race. But in the last day here, we make a very big step forward. So that means that when I will be fit and I could ride a little bit better and we could improve even more small details, we can be even stronger. And when we start working on the setting, we clearly improve the bike. And also I ride better in general. So little from here, we improve a lot. And today we could be competitive already and be very close to the fastest one. So very satisfied. That shows that we have potential, and if we keep working, we can go very high, no? Because the temperature was going drop a lot. Was a lot of humidity, a lot of coldness, and a lot of riders start crashing. So that's why we would like to speak quite seriously with Carlos Espeleta and the ones who decide the schedule of the race, because if we can put it earlier, will be much better for the safety of the riders. So hopefully we can modify this half an hour, 1 hour, as more as possible, because if we are unlucky to be on the race day in a very humid night, will be dangerous.
All right, so what he was talking about there is he crashed, and he feels like he crashed because of the humidity on the racetrack. And you know that it's like, it's not even dewy, Jason. It's like serious, as you know, because you've been there. I mean, I just saw posts on it. So that's what that second half was about. But the first bit, you know, him talking about still being healthy, taking a step, you know, those types of things. There's just something about the way he's posting, the way it just feels with Jorge. And I could be totally wrong, but it feels to me like he's arrived. In a way, he's a more mature rider, and I just, it's going to be very interesting to watch the dynamics of that team during the rest of the year, especially if he starts getting some wins and we go through halfway through the season and he starts demanding some bits and pieces that Marquez doesn't think about or doesn't want. How Honda's going to handle that will be very interesting, because when he was teamed with Rossi, I thought Yamaha did an excellent job of being able to say, we don't have an A and a B rider, we have two A riders. So will Honda have the same ability to do that is a question mark right now.
Well, right before you did that piece, my question to you was, how many races is it going to be before these two guys truly hate each other? Because I agree with you, Greg. I think he's come off the Ducati, which has been notoriously a bike that a lot of guys have jumped on and said it's not the easiest bike to ride. I think it's gotten easier over the last few years. But it wasn't for Lorenzo really until 2018. He had a horrendous 17, was pretty much written off at the beginning of 18, then goes and wins 3 races. I think that the Honda might be an easier step. And the only reason I say that, because we've heard a couple riders, well, mostly Crutchlow, say how hard the Honda is to ride. Even Jack Miller, when he went from the Honda to the Ducati, said the Honda was very hard to ride. Something has changed there, because Nakagami obviously has proven that he's been up front, been close. Didn't he lead at Jerez? I think Nakagami was quickest. So the Honda's obviously become maybe a little easier to ride than we can remember over the last few years. I know Crutchlow's been happy with the bike. So I think he's adapted pretty quickly to the bike, considering it's only his third day really on it, or third test on it after missing Sepang. If he starts winning races early and starts demanding a couple of things, it's going to be really interesting how Honda controls or how they handle that. They're going to do their best to make both guys as happy as they can, but I can hardly wait for the lights to go out there in Doha for that first round. And it almost sounded just now like you're already picking Marquez to win the championship. I mean, I'm not saying we're doing any predictions or nothing today, but it almost sounded like that already.
Who else can win a championship? Marquez, Lorenzo, Valentino Rossi, you know? But when you look at riders that can actually put an entire season together, I just think that the field itself is a bit thin from that perspective. You know, I know that there's definitely wild cards that are going to win races. Vinales, Rins, you know, maybe even, you know, a Petronas Yamaha earlier on in the year might put themselves in a good position. Maybe Nakagami's going to squeak out a win. But I think if you look at riders that know how to win championships, manage the entire season, and just have that mentality, I think it's hard to bet against Marquez again, even though obviously he hasn't been around testing because he's hurt. He just finds a way to dig deep, whether it's in qualifying and crashes and runs back to pit lane and gets on a bike and does it, or in a race where he can claw his way back, from being 5 or 6 seconds down to a championship where he's crashed at the beginning of the year and then ends up just checking out. It's hard to bet against him. So I guess I'm going to say the Marquez thing that you're talking about is just me being safe at this point. Who would I love to see win the championship? Come on. You tell me, Jason, who do you think I would love to see win this championship this year?
I think we need to save all this for the week leading up to our podcast, don't you? I mean, you got to remember there are people that bet against the New England Patriots every year, and most of the time they're disappointed. So, but it's pretty hard to bet. It should be hard to bet against Marquez. I agree with you. So, but that said, I think that when we get ready to do our podcast, the week of MotoGP, we can maybe pick our kind of top 3 like we did for World Superbike and see how it plays out. And by the way, what happened? Did something happen with the Patriots this week with their owner or something?
Not that I'm aware of. No. You mean Robert Kraft being a human being? No, I don't know. I don't know anything else about that.
Something about a massage or something. I don't know. That's
Aren't you going to lead
story.
us in? Can you just lead us into our next topic, please?
You got a classy team you got there, G-Dub. Pretty awesome. This weekend, Greg, was a Triple Crown at Detroit Supercross. And when you recap it, it was great races. I'm not sure about how the whole, if I'm sold on the Triple Crown thing, I think it's great that everybody gets to see it. But when you look at the combined results, they do it kind of as in an overall rather than 2 motos. So we get 3. And I don't get it, but we see Eli Tomac 1 week just look so out of the ordinary, and then you see him like he looked on Saturday night, where Ricky Carmichael put it best in the telecast. The only guy that's going to beat Eli Tomac is Eli Tomac, and he almost managed to do that, didn't he, at the end? But Eli Tomac goes on and gets the overall, winning the first 2, and I think finishing 6th or 5th in the third
6th.
one. Yep, 6th. And then you had Cooper Webb, who was completely out of the ordinary. I think he qualified way back 10th or something, 12th. But does what he does. He got good starts, found himself up in the front, went a little backwards in the first one, but goes ahead and wins the second or the third race to jump himself up into second overall. And with that, it continues to lead the points. I think on what would be considered maybe a bad night for him after the first 2 motos, to come back and finish the third one, winning it with Blake Baggett right behind him. But you got to say, there's just no way that you could not say this. The guy who got 3rd overall, our boy, I was so pumped, and I found myself actually kind of screaming at the TV a little bit when Chad got a good start at the beginning and ran second to Brayton for nearly the whole first moto. And the things that I think about the most with Chad is he's talked to us about good starts, and he got good starts, and the whoops were really gnarly. And the thing is Chad's so good in the whoops. But Chad Reed gets his 132nd, Greg, I believe it is.
That's right.
Podium finishes 3rd, and I thought it was great to see him do so well.
Me too. I think Roxon. So Chad went 3.57 to get 21 points, and that was 2 over Roxon, who went 5.65, which I thought was a bit of a surprise, to finish in 4th. Blake Baggett was in 5th. He had 4.11.2. That's quite a swing. So yeah, I mean, Muscan was back there, Savacci was back there. It's just a different format. And what's interesting is that, Chad has told us over the podcast that he's been working on those starts, Jason. And if you have to do 1 versus 3, I think the start really becomes an important part of winning, these Supercross races, more so than it is obviously in the one race, because you, at least if you get a bad start, you have time to make up some time. You know what I mean?
Agreed. And I think that when you look at what you're saying there with the starts, in those, it's Tomac got a bad start in the 3rd race, and it's just you put yourself at such risk coming through people and guys battling in front of you and that kind of thing. The one thing I'll say about Roxon that a lot of us didn't know is that he's been battling the flu pretty hard for the last 2 weeks. So his fitness and his probably endurance level was down just a little bit because of this sickness. So for me, to see Roxon kind of soldier his way through that evening as well, I think was good that he was able to just kind of get through that the best that he could. But man, Cooper Webb just looks so strong still. I think he's got that confidence now of being able to get that KTM off the line, get a good start, get himself up in the mix early, and that's kind of holding true for him right now.
Best Supercross season that we have seen in a long time in terms of the
Long
amount
time.
of people in there that are healthy that can go win races. Well, obviously you mentioned it. For Chad Reed, it's been a couple years since he stood on the box, and it was his 132nd time standing on the podium.
It was awesome. So last week kind of started there. Like, we did some testing last week, and that gave me a little more confidence in my feeling and my understanding of the bike in different areas of the track. Like, kind of from like good traction to bad traction. Like, I felt like we made that window bigger. So just overall, I felt like I carried a positive feeling into the weekend, and then that carried over. I mean, I was quietly confident all day. Like, I had that racy feel where I felt like I could go, like my body and my feeling felt like I could just do kind of lap after lap, and maybe that lap after lap speed wasn't an all out, top 5 speed for a qualifying lap, but I felt that once Gates dropped, that was gonna, like I was gonna be good enough to, fight for a top 5, possibly even a podium. So to do that was awesome. Third in the first one. Starts were important. The track was an interesting track. It was fast. It was quite easy, but yet technical in some way. So yeah, like, it suited me. The whoops were big, and they got real challenging. So I felt like my strength was there. But yeah, it was just a fun weekend. Like, each and every lap around the racetrack kind of was just enjoyable, and it's been a while since I felt that.
More upbeat in that interview since we've started talking to him at the beginning of the year, huh?
But you've seen it with Chad, I think, over the course where he's, I've told you, I've sensed the frustration. I've sensed that little feeling that he has as a competitor of, he's not just hanging around to hang around. I mean, he wants to still do well. He's not just doing it to make up the numbers. And I think he proved it this weekend. I think the fact that he finished third overall is great. I think the fact that he ran second for as long as he did in the first race actually tells a bit more of a story to me, because it shows that the guy he's grinding out the laps. And I didn't necessarily think, I thought that the track the week before was horrible. I thought this week the track would look better. It's still, it's got to be hard for these designers to come up with new thoughts, ideas. They had a cool dragon back this week that I thought was cool, but the whoops were really gnarly. They were really deep. They were really, really big. And when I saw those, when I turned the TV on and watched the first 250 race, my immediate thought was, and it's probably just because I've heard Chad talk about whoops so much, about the harder they are, the bigger they are, the better he likes it, that kind of thing. And when I saw that, I thought, man, this could be a night where if he can get his starts dialed in, and get out front early, get in that top 5, it's going to be good. So when I saw that right off the bat, and I saw him move himself up into second, and chase Brayton, I thought, wow, this is going to be a great night for him.
And Brayton, the vet national that they were talking about, that was pretty
yeah,
funny.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's great.
And so, I was like to Chad, you've been off the podium for so many years. Was it a relief to get this podium, or is it something that gets you more stoked and more motivated to keep it going and to take the next step?
I think it's a bit of everything. It was a triple crown, which, like, I don't necessarily love it or hate it. It's just kind of like, don't love it, don't hate it. It leaves you with a different feeling, like I'm so used to, when you finish on the podium, it's one big fight, and you achieve your goal and you get to go on the podium. Where this time it's like, it takes consistency, being there. Like, the first race I was on the podium and things like that, but like, I went 3-5-7. And so the last race, I didn't get the greatest start. Felt like I rode well. I made some passes, but, just was a little bit too far back to come much further forward. So that left me a little bit like disappointed from a riding standpoint, or just from a performance standpoint, but yet you're still on the podium. So, the racer in you knows that you had flashes of brilliance, and I was good enough to be a podium guy, but you know that you also got to put yourself in the right place at the right time. And so, yeah, you kind of leave with weird feeling, you know. It's not like, I don't know, just it's different. Like the whole points gathering rather than that one all out performance for 20 plus laps.
I have a feeling if he went like 7.53, it would feel a little better, but I totally get what he's saying. Having 3 races in one night.
Like I was going to say, you led me right into it, because I was going to say the exact same thing. If he'd have finished 3rd in the last race, he would have thought, oh, that's great momentum to build on into Atlanta. And you kind of feel probably when you leave there, like, oh, I finished 7th. Like, but it goes back again. He was a little bit too far back at the start in that 3rd race. I got to think that if you're a Supercross guy, starting is just one of those things. And I know those guys practice it all the time, but it's got to be one of those things that you got to go to the line feeling like I am the best starter here. Because if you don't have that confidence to get a good start, you know, I watch the races on the weekend sometimes, and I really focus on the guy who is last or second to last into turn 1. And a lot of times those guys come out mid-pack or better because they kind of hug the inside of the first turn and just kind of let everybody push wide. And there are times to me where I almost think that it's better to, if you realize that you don't have a very good start and you're kind of in that mid-pack of craziness, I almost think sometimes it's better to let off and just kind of let everybody go and then just kind of sort your way out around the inside of the turn. Because so many times, Greg, these guys come out 5th, 6th, 7th that were dead last down on the run down to the first turn. Be interesting to talk to a couple of these guys about that kind of philosophy on that, because, you know, and I think it really depends on the kind of first turn. It depends if it's a really gnarly 90-degree or if it's something a little bit more sweeping and more open, of how their strategies change when it comes to whether they get a good jump or not.
Yeah, definitely depends too on what's coming after turn 1 as well. You know, what type of obstacles they put right after turn 1, because it's the only time you go through that. And then once they close that opening area off, and then you're back on the track. But this weekend Supercross is in Atlanta, and it's a 4-hour drive from Chad's new home in Charlotte. Now, he told me he's going to fly down there, and then his wife and 3 kids, who are 8, 6, and 4 years old, they're going to come down after school on Friday, and then they'll all drive home together. So when he was telling me that, Jay, I was really curious that if Chad had ever thought, that if he ever had the thought that he would still be racing and his kids would be old enough to really share the racing with him, and how he feels about that as a dad.
I can honestly say that, like, I'm your typical, or what I would think to be your typical male athlete, you know, like I just thought about myself, really, to be honest. Never, you know, like, it wasn't that I didn't want kids or anything like that. They just were never on my mind, you know, like I just thought dirt bikes and dirt bikes only, and thought of myself and how I could be better and what I could do to contribute to that. And I think that kids, you know, came into my life at the perfect time, you know, and I just think that they bring perspective, they bring that love and that challenging the mind, you know, like just challenging the mind away from racing allows me to be better, you know, be a better dad, a better husband, a better human, really, just in the fact that I don't get to carry on and be mad 7 days a week because my performance on the weekend wasn't what I wanted it to be. It allows me to be more present, and for me, I think that's made a better me, a happier me, and I'm really stoked that I get to kind of experience this, you know, this tail end of my career with my kids being aware of, you know, like I feel like setting a good example is important, and you know, they see how hard I work and the commitment that I have, you know, when I'm home to them, to mom, to, you know, all those things. So that's, you know, the life lessons for me.
I'm sure you feel the same way about your kids.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think it's great. And the fact that they're 4, 6, and 8 years old, the only thing I can say about that is it's a little relatable to me, because I grew up with a dad that was racing at a high level, and I got to go to the racetrack with him a lot. And I remember being old enough, like even his 4-year-old now is going to be old enough to remember these years now. So when they're so young that they don't really remember the work ethic and stuff that Chad put in, I'm sure it's a lot different than it is now, where they're actually seeing what he's doing, how he's doing it, how committed he is to the job. And as they get older, they're going to realize that the sport that Chad is in is a sport that not a lot of guys his age are successful at. So the fact that he's successful and he's relevant, that he's putting in the hours and he's putting in the work, are going to shine through for his kids as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's got to be a neat thing for him to be able to share it with the kids and, with all of us. I mean, I think it's great that he's on here talking to us about all this stuff, because you're getting to see a different side of him. And hopefully this will be the jumpstart that he needed this last weekend that's going to, push him forward even more, Greg.
Yeah, and I hope so. And one thing he said about Atlanta, Jay, was the fact that, he's been here now for a few months, and every day he's here, he rides North Carolina. I say here, I mean North Carolina. And he rides that dirt, and he said this is the track. I mean, the dirt that he's going to race on in Atlanta is going to be identical to the dirt that he's been riding on at the practice track with the JGR team. So he's pretty excited about going to Atlanta. Let's see, he told me that to the day, it's his last win 3 years ago was in Atlanta. So he's got that.
Wow.
He's got that third place in his mind. And he also has the fact that Atlanta was the last race he won 3 years ago to the day when it gets to Saturday. So yeah, he's pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and Chad seems like right now, if he can literally find that half to 3/4 of a second speed wise, I mean, really, when you watch his times and you watch what he does, and I'm not going by qualifying, I'm going by race times and things. It's like if he just finds that last little bit, he'll be right up there competing and being up front. So thanks again for Chad for being on. That's a little recap of our Detroit Supercross. But what I want to get to is our fantasy Supercross, Greg. We had our Rocky Mountain ATV motorcycle fantasy Supercross league that we have been in. And hold on, I'm just working my way from the bottom and just trying to find out how you did last week.
I slipped from 25th to what, 31st?
31st. Greg, you earned 10 points. Now 10 out of a possible 133. That is struggle bus. And let's see how our boy Travis did. Travis is catching you.
Well, first of all, you slipped from 3rd to 4th, or from 2nd to 4th, and you got pole vaulted by Corey Alexander. So Alexander,
we're the same.
We got the same place.
We got the same points, and I don't understand why he's getting credited with 3rd and I'm 4th when we're both stuck at 284. Probably because of this last weekend's results, and he moved up.
Listen, I didn't get my picks in this week, and that's on me.
Oh, that's right. Because you were down doing the archery
I was on
thing.
air.
Yep.
I was down, and I was on air from the 3 hours before the race started, like for when they closed the RM Fantasy SX. So I'm not going to make excuses. I guess I could have just randomly picked before looking at practice times, but I do like to do a little research. At least get on there, and I'll check out practice times and see, how the riders were doing, try to look at, as much information as I can, then make an educated decision. So, yeah.
Greg, you know what I did? And I know you're just going to tell me I'm full of it, but you know how you make your picks, right? Well, I got a little source now. So I went and I got a little bit of a source on how the actual practices and qualifyings went. So unbeknownst to me,
source.
I'm not going to tell you, I can't give up my sources. So,
I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess and say it's, I bet that all of a sudden you started texting out of nowhere. Oh my God, what's his name? Rode for Suzuki for all those years. Arenacross, won all those Arenacross races. Came out to Star School.
Buddy
Antunez. Sorry, buddy.
No,
I know you're a diehard listener of this podcast.
But he doesn't he probably doesn't know we exist. Number one. Number two, Buddy. He is literally the best motocrosser that ever came road racing. By the way, Buddy was. I've said that before. But nope. I'm not giving up my source, so you ain't gonna know. But so what I did, okay, because they said that the race was going to be on here at 5, so 7 Detroit time. So I'm at 4:00 here. I go to put in my picks, and I'd already placed them, and I went in to change them. I went in to change my picks. Have you done that before, where you go in and change them?
Yeah.
After you've submitted. I went and took Tomac to win, but I also had Tomac to finish 3rd. So I had Tomac to win. So I was going over to switch my pick for 3rd, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it all went off. It ran out of time. Ran
out of time.
So I had Tomac to finish 1st and 3rd. And so I thought, I've totally screwed something up here. I'm hosed.
Yeah.
But thank goodness it went back to what my actual picks of the night were. Because I'm not, I actually had Tomac to win, but I got credited.
I got you.
You understand? I picked Roczen to win. But then I changed it, but it was just weird because for a minute there, I thought I screwed it up to where I wasn't going to get any of my picks in at all. So Greg, so what you're saying is this week with Atlanta, you're gonna study your picks and you're gonna do better. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Hey,
because I got two things going on. Number one, I want to beat you more than I want to beat a dirty carpet. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
And number two, I got to beat Travis Becker because
he's only 10 points. He's 10 points behind you.
Exactly. And if you're listening to this for the first time, old Beat G Dub, which is his little, tag on the Greg's Garage Pod group in the rmfantasysx.com league thingy, $20 for the winner. We have to pay the Road Racing World Action Fund for air fence. So, you know what? I don't really care about the $20. I just want to beat him. But the fact that you're fourth.
Yeah, but
what do you got? 284. And I have how many? 175.
I don't.
So whatever. It's 100-something points. I got you covered, dude. And this is going to be.
Do you know who else is You know who else is beating you that I love? Producer Dan.
Yeah, he's smoking.
Good old Dan's beating you.
I know.
You got. I mean,
Ralphie 95, which is Roger Hayden. He's
beating you. You got Chuck Askland's beating you. Yeah. It's like there's a lot of people that you have to look at in the paddock. I mean, Miles Thornton had a huge week. Or was it last week? Last week he had a huge week, but this week he got 36 points. So he's top 10 still, top 10. And my boy Kevin's going backwards, but All
right.
Anyways.
Enough with this.
Hey, how about the leader of our group?
Yeah.
The leader of our group, Fatchy17.
Yeah. Who is that?
He's inside the top 1,000 now in the league. Isn't there like 60,000 people? Isn't there like 60,000 plus people playing this?
Well, there's 7,772 groups. But I mean, I can tell you the guy who's last in our group is tied for 68,273. Yeah.
And he hasn't scored any points. So he hasn't. So
yeah.
There's close to 70,000 people playing this. And the guy leading our group is inside the top 1,000. I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Our group sucks.
Pretty good.
Our group sucks, but it's pretty good. It's been fun doing it.
All right, that means it's time, Jason, for us to do our quick shift segment that's presented by ARAI. And for 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets. And of course, ARAI Helmets meets all safety standards. But they also pride themselves on having a blend of engineering tech and human craftsmanship. That makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects your head better. Your head is worth the best. Go visit ARAIAmericas.com because riding season is right around the corner. You want to get yourself a helmet? For more information, ARAIAmericas.com for tech, fit, and paint jobs. You owe it to you. Get yourself a new helmet for riding season, people. Get an ARAI. All right, Jay, in this one, I'm going to start a clock, 60 seconds to talk about these next couple quick topics before we sign out of here. And when that time is up, which means it's time for you to shut up. Although you never do, but it doesn't really matter. This is just a general thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So here's the thing, Jay. This one's it's a little newsy, but I want to send a shout out to Phoenix Racing Honda's Jace Owen, the Illinois native, now North Carolina resident. He was crowned double champion over the weekend. He won both the 250 Pro and Open Pro classes on a Honda CRF 450R in the Arenacross series. Now, he won all the 250 races he entered, and he won all but his last in the open class. He finished third in that one, and he did it all on the same bike. Now he turns his attention to the 250E Supercross Championship. Jay, important for Arenacross that Owen is able to produce in Supercross.
I don't really think that a lot of guys have gone from Supercross or from the Arenacross up to the Supercross. I know that, I would definitely love to see Jace light it up in Supercross. The tracks are just so much different. They go from essentially a tiny little bull ring to something that's a little bit more open. I've been watching it obviously pretty close. Tyler Bowers is a guy that comes to mind that's done okay. Obviously in Supercross, but he's kind of been just outside that top 10. But yeah, it would be great to see Jace. I mean, great accomplishment for him so far this year, and it would be amazing to see him jump into that East Coast series and do some damage. Because right now, Austin Faulkner is just winning everything. It's not even been close. He's won every main that he's jumped into. So of course, we'd love to see Jace do well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Faulkner, by the way, for sure.
Guy's just killing it, and he looks good doing it. Yeah, so we'll see. Motorsports.com reports that MotoGP is set to adopt a long lap penalty, Greg. That's going to be a new rule this year. Imagine adding an extra corner to a corner. So, in other words, if a rider does something that the race steward deems needs a small penalty, the rider will have to use the penalty lane in a specified corner. So what they're going to basically do is they're going to make a turn that's going to be a little bit longer loop. So it's going to impose this penalty. They have tested it in turn 8 at Doha, and Rossi thought it was a 3-second penalty. What do you think?
I don't know, Jay. I mean, I saw the photograph of it. So turn 8, it's nice. Let's just say it's a 180-degree turn. So basically you kind of run straight, and then you take that same turn, but you're a lot deeper onto that asphalt. I don't know. I mean, anytime you put somebody in an impact zone, it makes me nervous, but you know what I mean? And I'm not really sure. I know that the idea is that if you have some type of minor infraction, the pit lane is such a penalty. I mean, it just completely ruins and takes you out. So I'm not sure if there's a real good solution for it, and I'm not convinced that this is the solution. What about you?
Greg, let me ask you a question. When did racing just get so complicated? Why do all these outside governing thoughts and bodies have to come in and start making all these lame rules? This is stupid. This is not even a question in my mind. If I was currently a rider, it would be so hard because, look, if you're gonna penalize me, the pit lane thing to me is crazy because some pit lanes are a lot longer than other pit lanes. So if you getting penalized and I getting penalized, and the pit lane that you had to roll down one weekend was 3 times longer than the one I had to roll down on another weekend, is that really fair? I think that they've got to just be able to come up with some sort of idea that the penalty is worth a certain amount of time, whether it's 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Don't really know what it is, but there's got to be a better option than running somebody on a longer loop that puts them in an impact zone where somebody can take them out. Plus, that part of the track that they're now creating, how clean is it going to be? What's going to be out there? Is it going to be dirty? There's just, I don't know, man. There's just a lot of things that don't really seem to add up with that type of thing for me. I mean, I don't like it.
It's tough.
In case you couldn't tell.
Yeah, in case I couldn't tell. Listen, it was a relatively light MotoAmerica week in terms of like stuff. But Dunlop did announce that they have an all new KR448 front and a KR451 rear. And I know that doesn't mean much to you, you big doof, but let me break it down for you. It's a new lightweight motorcycle slick tire, and it'll be used for the MotoAmerica Liqui Moly Junior Cup for this year. And of course, they're made in Buffalo right here in the United States and have been in the works for many months. You're close to the Junior Cup. Jason, what do you think?
I think it's great. I think it's going to just continue to evolve the class. I think that they've actually been testing them out here at Chuckwalla. Don't quote me on that, but I believe they have been.
They have been.
Yeah, they've been out here. I haven't been out there for the last couple of rounds, but I know that they've been putting some Junior Cup kids on the tire. So I think anything to make those guys more comfortable, make it better, and it's just Dunlop's way again of evolving and continue to. Even though we're a one brand tire in MotoAmerica, Dunlop continues to push the ideas that we got to make our product better. And that goes right back down to the consumer. So yeah, I think it's great, Greg. And I think that the more kids they put on them and come Atlanta, we'll be able to see some close racing. That class is going to be insane this year. Again, I think it's going to be really, really good racing in that Liqui Moly class. Yeah,
I'm looking forward. I think also part of this slick tire is that there is competition out there at the club level, because yes. Dunlop owns They own the MotoAmerica series, but they don't just look at MotoAmerica in terms of their competition. So, with other riders riding slick tires in club races, they want to make sure that they had something as well. So good job, Dunlop. Looking forward to see that slick. That means that we're all slicks now across the board, I believe. So, all right. How about our race calendar, Jason? The first week of March is this weekend, and it's packed with racing. You have Supercross in Atlanta. The Kicker Arenacross series wraps up in Amarillo, Texas. You have AMA East Hare Scrambles in Garysburg, North Carolina, FIM Motocross in Argentina, and Works series at Lake Havasu City in Arizona all weekend long. Of course, Jason, we do encourage everyone to go out and watch live racing, do we not?
Man, absolutely. Get out there. And I know the Works race at Lake Havasu is one that, man, for years I thought it would be a fun one to do because it's kind of like, it's not like full moto. It's actually a really cool looking event that they have. But now, Greg, it gets exciting because the last couple of weeks, the calendar that you keep talking about here keeps getting bigger. And I know we got Daytona around the corner, first MotoGP around the corner, second World Superbike around the corner, and before you know it, we're going to be in Atlanta for our opening round of MotoAmerica. So, yeah, I'm excited. Get out there and watch as much racing as you can if you can't participate in it.
All right, that'll do it for Jason and myself. Thanks for listening to our podcast. As this calendar grows, let's hope our podcast doesn't grow to 4 or 5 hours. It's wearing me out there, buddy. But we had a good time bringing you all this information, and we hope that we've given you some perspective on some of the things that are happening around the motorcycle world. Right, Jay?
Yeah, I love it, Greg. And thanks again for getting the good information. And I want everybody to think about what we talked about with the series today with MotoAmerica, or with World Superbike specifically. I just saw another great article written about it. And that was a fun show today, Greg. Thanks so much.